उल्टा सीधा ग्रह।
मैंने पिछले हफ्ते जो टेस्ट लिया था उसके मार्क्स दे दिए गए हैं। मैं जिसका नाम पुकारूं वो सामने की तरफ आ जाए, ठीक है?
ठीक है।
देखी सुकी,
जी सर।
तुमने वाकई में बहुत अच्छा काम किया है। ऐसे ही मेहनत करते रहना, सफल हो जाओगे।
ठीक है।
अब ये पेपर है नोबिता का।
यस सर।
देखो, तुम्हारा रिजल्ट बहुत ही गंदा है, बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी।
ठीक है।
सुनियो, नोबिता को देख रहे हो ना? मुझे यकीन है उसको 0 मिला होगा जियान।
क्या है ये भी? मुझे आज फिर से मॉम से डांट पड़ेगी।
हे नोबिता, टेस्ट में फिर से 0 मिला ना? दोस्त, तुम पढ़ाई में सच में बहुत कमजोर हो।
बस करो।
देखी सुगी, तुम यहाँ?
जीवन में पूरे नंबर लाने से भी ज्यादा जरूरी और चीजें भी हैं, समझ गए जियान? और सुनियो। शुक्रिया देखी सुगी, तुम बहुत अच्छे हो। कोई बात नहीं नोबिता। ठीक है।
तुम क्या कर रहे हो?
नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं।
इस पर कुछ लिखा है, देखता हूँ क्या लिखा है। मैं स्मार्ट बनना चाहता हूँ क्योंकि सब तुम्हारा मजाक उड़ाते हैं, इसलिए तुम स्मार्ट बनना चाहते हो। और तुम्हें लगता है कि तुम इस तरह विश मांगोगे तो तुम स्मार्ट बन जाओगे। तुम्हारे पास डंडा नहीं था इसलिए तुमने फिशिंग पोल इस्तेमाल किया। कितना बेकार आइडिया है। तुम भी ना नोबिता।
प्लीज स्मार्ट बना दो।
मैं तुम्हें स्मार्ट बना सकता हूँ, लेकिन टेलीस्कोपिक मिरर।
क्या कहा? टेलीस्कोपिक मिरर? फिर क्या है?
चलो मैं तुम्हें दिखाता हूँ कि हमारा यूनिवर्स कितना बड़ा होता है,
तुम
समझे?
सच कह रहे हो? अरे वाह, ये तो मिल्की वे है। कमाल है। क्या इसको और पास से देख सकते हैं?
हाँ हाँ।
अरे वाह, ये क्या चीज है? डोनट की तरह लग रहा है। अरे ये प्लेनेट, ये तो धरती की तरह लगता है।
ऐसा नहीं हो सकता।
सच कह रहा हूँ।
जरा मुझे देखने दो। तुम सही कह रहे हो, ये तो पृथ्वी ही लग रही है। ये तो
क्या हो गया तुम्हें?
देखो, तुम भी देखो।
क्या हुआ? हाँ? ये बिल्कुल हमारे देश की तरह लग रहा है, लेकिन थोड़ा अजीब नहीं है?
हाँ पता है। ये देखो, ये हमारी पृथ्वी का मैप है। अब तुम दोबारा इस टेलीस्कोप के जरिए देखो।
हाँ, दायां और बायां उलट गया है।
हाँ,
इसका क्या मतलब हुआ?
पता नहीं, लेकिन हमें उस ग्रह पर जाना ही होगा।
हाँ, वो कैसे?
मेरे होते हुए सब हो सकता है। तो अब चलते हैं।
बहुत अच्छा है।
वो देखो, हमें उस ग्रह पर जाना है।
चलो।
वहाँ बादल है, इसका मतलब उस ग्रह पर अपना वातावरण है।
वहाँ लोग भी रहते हैं।
अब ये तो मुझे नहीं पता। जरा वो देखो।
वो पीछे देखो,
वहाँ एक शहर भी है।
वहाँ तो एक पहाड़ है डोरेमोन। वहाँ स्कूल भी है। ये तो बिल्कुल हमारे शहर जैसा है।
सही कहा।
सुनो, तुम्हें नहीं लगता कि ये हमारी धरती की तरह है?
नहीं, ऐसा तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं हो सकता। नोबिता, वो देखो तुम्हारा स्कूल।
हाँ? इसके नंबर उलट पुलट हैं।
लेकिन देखो तो सही, घड़ी में नंबर उल्टे हैं।
ये देखो खाली मैदान जहाँ हम खेलते हैं, ये ज्यादा बदला हुआ नहीं लग रहा। बस दाईं और बाईं साइड बदल गई है। ये क्या हो रहा है?
बहुत अजीब बात है, लेकिन ये एक बहुत ही बड़ी खोज है।
हाँ? ये क्या?
दोनों की आवाजें उलट गई हैं।
दुकानें तो जानी पहचानी लग रही हैं, लेकिन इनके बोर्ड कुछ अजीब लग रहे हैं।
इन पर लिखे अक्षर भी उलट गए हैं। हे, वो देखो, सूरज भी उल्टी तरफ से निकल रहा है।
समझ नहीं आ रहा डोरेमोन, ये सब कैसे हो रहा है?
हमें चलकर देखना चाहिए।
डैड जल्दी ही अपने ऑफिस के लिए निकलने वाले होंगे।
देखो वो रहे।
अच्छा सुनिए, अब मैं चलता हूँ।
ठीक है, आप अपना ध्यान रखिएगा। आपका दिन अच्छा रहे।
डैड मॉम बन गए हैं और मॉम डैड बन गई है।
ये तो बहुत अजीब है। सिर्फ दाया बाया नहीं, सब कुछ ही बदल गया है। सब कुछ उल्टा पुल्टा हो गया है। पृथ्वी से बिल्कुल उल्टा। ये तो एक उल्टा पुल्टा ग्रह है।
तो मैं यहाँ पर कहाँ पर हूँ? क्या मैं यहाँ पर हूँ?
चलो देखते हैं।
ये हर तरफ से मेरी जैसी लग रही है, लेकिन कपड़े कुछ अलग हैं। ये बिल्कुल मेरी तरह दिख रहा है, लेकिन इसके कपड़े कुछ अलग हैं। तुम्हारा नाम क्या है? मेरा नाम नोबिता है। क्या? मैं भी नोबिता हूँ। सच में? तो हमारा नाम भी एक ही है। तब तो तुम डोरेमोन ही होगे ना?
लेकिन तुम कैसे जानते हो? थोड़ा धीरे नहीं बोल सकते?
डोरेमोन?
ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? मैं यहाँ सो रही हूँ। ये तो मैं हूँ।
गुड मॉर्निंग डोरेमोन।
ये तो मैं ये तो बिल्कुल मुझसे उल्टा है। तुमसे मिलकर खुशी हुई। मैं हूँ डोरेमोन। मैं भी डोरेमोन हूँ। हम बिल्कुल एक जैसे हैं। मुझे तो खुशी नहीं हुई।
तुम दोनों से मिलकर खुशी हुई। अब मैं धीरे धीरे समझ रही हूँ। जहाँ से तुम लोग आए हो वहाँ चीजें उल्टी है ना? बिल्कुल सही कहा।
ये वाला नोबिता अक्लमंद है।
अच्छा, तो ये बताओ तुम दोनों कहाँ से आए हो? धरती से आए हैं। कमाल की बात है, ये भी तो धरती ही है।
तुम लोग कितनी जोर से चीखते हो।
तुम खुद देख लो, यहाँ लिखा है धरती।
हाँ सही कह रहे हो।
जैसा कि मैंने सोचा था, यहाँ सब कुछ इधर उधर है, सब उल्टा है। हाँ?
यहाँ पर तो कितनी सारी किताबें हैं। तुम्हारे बुक शेल्फ में तो कॉमिक्स ही है नोबिता। और तुम्हें पता है, मेरा वाला नोबिता तो स्कूल में सबसे अक्लमंद बच्चा है। जरा ये देखो। वाह, सब में 100। तुम्हें तो हमेशा 0 मार्क्स मिलते हैं।
चुप रहो।
मैं भविष्य से आई हूँ इतने अक्लमंद नोबिता को थोड़ा सा बुद्धू बनाने के लिए। थोड़ा अजीब है ना? मतलब ये बात भी बिल्कुल उल्टी है।
चुप हो जाओ। मैं बहुत स्मार्ट हूँ, पढ़ाई में बहुत अच्छा हूँ और खेलकूद में भी बहुत बढ़िया। ये तो बिल्कुल मेरे से बहुत ज्यादा अलग है।
नोबिता, तुम अभी तक घर पर ही हो?
मैं बस बाहर जाने ही वाली थी।
हाँ, मैं जानती हूँ। नोबिता कभी भी लेट नहीं हो सकती है।
देखो, ये कभी भी लेट नहीं होता है। ये तो बहुत धीरे चल रहा है। पैदल ही चले जाओ ना। कोई बात नहीं, ये स्पीड नोबिता के लिए ठीक है।
एक आइडिया आया। क्या तुम मेरी जगह क्लास के लिए जाना चाहते हो? हमारी शक्ल बिल्कुल एक जैसी है। अगर हम कपड़े बदल लें तो किसी को कुछ पता नहीं चलेगा। हाँ, शायद तुम सही हो।
नहीं नोबिता,
चलो मुझे करने दो। मैं दुनिया का नंबर 1 जीनियस हूँ। तुम्हें पता है डोरेमोन, पहली बार मुझे पता चलेगा कि स्मार्ट बनना क्या होता है।
कुछ गड़बड़ होगी तो मुझे मत बोलना।
इसकी चिंता मत करो। तो फिर ठीक है। असल में स्कूल का काम बहुत बोरिंग होता है और मैं अक्लमंद कहलाते कहलाते थक गई हूँ और अब कुछ नया करना चाहती हूँ। तो ठीक है, देखते हैं आगे क्या होता है। स्कर्ट पहनना कितना मुश्किल है। बहुत अजीब लग रहा है।
नोबिता सुनो।
हाँ?
गुड मॉर्निंग। कल होमवर्क में मेरी मदद करने के लिए शुक्रिया।
ठीक ही सुगी मुझे शुक्रिया कह रहा है। कितनी अच्छी दुनिया है।
टारगेट मिल गया। वो लड़की जो लाल ड्रेस में खड़ी हुई है वही नोबिता है और काफी अक्लमंद भी है।
मुझे तो नहीं लगता कि ये बेवकूफ सी दिखने वाली लड़की अक्लमंद होगी।
अरे वो अक्लमंद है।
सच में इस दुनिया में कुछ भी कहना बहुत मुश्किल है।
तो देखते हैं पिछले हफ्ते वाले टेस्ट में किसके कितने मार्क्स आए। नोबिता, यहाँ पर आओ।
जी?
तुमने वाकई में बहुत अच्छा काम किया है। ऐसे ही मेहनत करते रहना, सफल हो जाओगी।
ठीक है। हाँ?
देखिए सुगी, यहाँ आओ।
जी सर।
ये देखो, तुम्हारे टेस्ट में 0 आए हैं। अच्छे से मेहनत किया करो वरना फेल हो जाओगी।
ठीक है।
जियान, डेकी सुगी को देख रहे हो ना? मुझे यकीन है उसे फिर 0 मिला होगा। डेकी सुगी,
तुम्हें फिर से टेस्ट में 0 मिला ना?
दोस्त तुम पढ़ाई में सच में बहुत कमजोर हो।
तुम चाहे जितनी भी मेहनत कर लो लेकिन तुम्हें मिलेगा 0 ही।
बस करो दोस्तों।
नोबिता,
अरे
जीवन में पूरे नंबर लाने से भी ज्यादा जरूरी और चीजें हैं। समझ गए जियान और सुनियो।
शुक्रिया नोबिता, तुम बहुत अच्छी हो।
कोई बात नहीं।
ये नोबिता क्या कर रहा है? लगता है उसे कोई परेशानी नहीं है, क्यों है ना? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि ये पृथ्वी पर वापस नहीं जाना चाहता है?
वैसे भी मुझे फिजिक्स अवार्ड सेरेमनी के लिए स्पीच तैयार करनी है, तो हमें चलना चाहिए।
तुम्हें प्राइज मिलने वाला है? इतनी छोटी उम्र में पहली बार किसी को ये प्राइज मिल रहा है, ये तो कमाल है।
इस तरह का काम करना मेरे लिए बिल्कुल बड़ी बात नहीं है। हाय, कैसी हो? मेरा मतलब है कैसे हो शिजुका?
अरे नोबिता,
ये क्या हो रहा है?
तुम ठीक तो हो ना नोबिता?
हाँ शिजुका, मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ।
अरे ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? ये तो बहुत ही अजीब बात है कि तुम्हारी जैसी खिलाड़ी उस बॉल से बच नहीं पाई।
हाँ? हाँ? तो ये नोबिता अच्छी खिलाड़ी भी है। मुझे तो इतना अजीब लग रहा है कि मेरी तबीयत खराब ही हो रही है।
क्या? कैसा इत्तेफाक है? मेरी भी तबीयत खराब हो रही है, और अगर मैं कहूँ मुझे बहुत तेज बुखार हो रहा है तो मुझे खेलना भी नहीं पड़ेगा।
ये सब कितना उल्टा पुल्टा हो रहा है।
खाने के लिए शुक्रिया। ये तो बिल्कुल टेस्टी नहीं होते। हाँ, ये तो बहुत टेस्टी होते हैं। ओह समझ गया, यहाँ सब कुछ उल्टा है ना, इसलिए तुम्हें ये नहीं पसंद। नमकीन है, पर ये तो डोरा केक ही है। तुम्हें तो पसंद है ना? ये मैंने क्या पी लिया? तुम्हें क्या हो गया? ये तो दूध है।
सुनो बच्चों, आज मेरे पास तुम्हारे लिए बहुत अच्छी खबर है। हमारे स्कूल की बच्ची नोबिता को स्कूल के बेस्ट प्राइज के लिए चुना गया है।
अरे नहीं, वो तो
अरे वाह, ये तो कमाल हो गया।
ये बहुत अच्छी बात है, हमें पार्टी करनी चाहिए।
तुम सच में बहुत इंटेलिजेंट हो नोबिता।
अरे वाह नोबिता, तुमने तो कमाल कर दिया।
ये मैं नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है। काश मैं यहाँ हमेशा रह पाता।
कोई इतना कैसे सो सकता है? चूहा, 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 बचाओ, चूहा।
ये वाले डोरेमोन को चूहे नहीं पसंद क्या?
कौन इतना शोर मचा रहा है? ओह, कितना प्यारा सा चूहा है। हे, तुम ठीक हो ना? तुम एक चूहे से डरते हो? तुम्हें चूहे से डर नहीं लगता क्या? बिल्ली, बिल्ली, बिल्ली। तुम्हें बिल्लियाँ पसंद नहीं है? अजीब है।
ये देखो झाड़ू, ये एक सीढ़ी और ये पहाड़।
अरे वाह,
अरे ये तुमने कैसे किया नोबिता? तुम सच में कुछ भी कर सकती हो।
तुम बहुत ही ज्यादा टैलेंटेड हो। जो चीज तुम एक बार ठान लेती हो उसको तुम जरूर पूरा करती हो, क्यों है ना जियान?
सुनियो, तुमने सही कहा।
मुझे ये सारी बातें सुनकर सच में बहुत बुरा लगता है।
मुझे लगता है तुम्हें इस तरह से बात नहीं करनी चाहिए।
हाँ?
सभी के अंदर कुछ अच्छाई होती है दोस्तों।
नोबिता, तुम सच में बहुत अच्छी हो। तुम मेरी मदद करते हो, तुम्हारा शुक्रिया।
मुझे तुम्हारी मदद करके खुशी हुई।
ठीक है, जिसको इस सवाल का जवाब आता है वो अपने हाथ उठा दे। क्या क्लास में कोई भी नहीं? मतलब मेरे पास कोई और चारा है ही नहीं। तो अब मैं हमेशा की तरह नोबिता से पूछती हूँ, नोबिता।
ये तो क्या है?
आज इसको क्या हो गया है?
आज इससे कुछ हो क्यों नहीं रहा है?
नोबिता, तुम्हें ये हर हाल में करना ही होगा।
नोबिता, कुछ परेशानी है क्या?
हाँ, मेरे ख्याल से इस क्वेश्चन में ही गलती है।
ओह, माफ करना, मेरे क्वेश्चन में ही कुछ गलती है नोबिता।
ये वाकई बहुत बड़ी जीनियस है। इसको पता था कि क्वेश्चन में ही कुछ गलती
आज
है।
साबित हो गया कि नोबिता एक जीनियस है।
वाह नोबिता, तुमने तो कमाल ही कर दिया।
अरे मुझे पता है, शुरू से ही पता था क्वेश्चन में गड़बड़ है।
कमाल कर दिया।
नोबिता, दरअसल हम तुम्हें जो अवार्ड मिला है उसके लिए पार्टी करना चाहते हैं।
हाँ सच में जियान?
ये हमारी तरफ से तुम्हारे लिए एक तोहफा होगा नोबिता।
हाँ, बहुत कुछ ज्यादा तो नहीं है, लेकिन
शुक्रिया, मैं जरूर देखना चाहूंगी कि क्या होगा। जियान का गाना सुनना पड़ेगा।
अरे रुक क्यों गई, आगे बढ़ो ना।
इतनी दूर आकर जियान का गाना सुनना पड़ रहा है।
बहुत बहुत बधाई हो नोबिता मेरे दोस्त। आज मैं दिल से तुम्हारे लिए गाना गाऊंगी, ठीक है ना? मैं हूँ जियान, मेरा गला है बहुत सुरीला। मैं हूँ जियान, मेरा गला है
समझ गया,
सुरीला।
यहाँ सब उल्टा पुल्टा है, इसलिए जियान का गाना बहुत अच्छा है।
मैं हूँ जियान, मेरा गला बहुत ही सुरीला।
अरे वाह, बहुत बढ़िया जियान, तुम गानों की रानी
हमारा
हो।
शुक्रिया, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया मेरे दोस्तों, थैंक यू।
नोबिता लेट हो गया है, वो जरूर कहीं फंस गया होगा।
देखो वो आ गया। ये जगह कितनी अच्छी है, मजा आ गया। मैं तो यहीं रहना चाहता हूँ। ओ?
हेलो, अगर मैं गलत नहीं हूँ तो तुम ही हो नोबिता? हाँ?
हेलो, जी हाँ, लगता है मैं यहाँ पर बहुत मशहूर हूँ। हाँ? हाँ?
वो क्या है कि हमें तुम्हारी मदद चाहिए थी नोबिता।
क्या मेरी मदद? ये क्या हो रहा है? क्या हो गया नोबिता? तुम्हें पता है लोगों को मेरी मदद क्यों
आखिर
चाहिए?
ये कैसे हो सकता है? अब क्या करें? इन दोनों में से किसको अपने साथ लेकर जाएं? ये तो बड़ी मुसीबत है, चलो दोनों को ही ले चलते हैं। पकड़ लिया। भागता कहाँ है यहाँ?
छोड़ो मुझे।
मैंने कहा चुप हो जाओ।
मेरा नोबिता, मेरा नोबिता।
बचाओ,
आ गए बच्चे कब्जे में,
डोरेमोन।
तो अब क्या करना है बताओ।
डोरेमोन।
चलो अब जल्दी चलते हैं। ठीक है।
सबर कर, रुक जाओ। अब हम क्या करेंगे? The Tracer Badge! इस मैप से हम बैज का पीछा कर सकते हैं। समझी? तुम तो अक्लमंद हो। हाँ, वो समुद्र में जा रहे हैं। ओह नहीं, अब क्या होगा?
प्रोफेसर, हम नोबिता को अपने साथ ले आए हैं।
नोबिता, तुम्हारा स्वागत है। मैंने तुम्हें यहाँ इसलिए बुलाया है क्योंकि मुझे तुमसे काम है।
लेकिन क्या काम है?
देखो, मैं दुनिया पर कब्जा करना चाहता हूँ, इसलिए मैंने कुछ बनाया है। ध्यान से देख लो, ये है हमारा सीक्रेट हथियार।
दुनिया पर कब्जा करना है? तुम बहुत बुरे हो, तुम ऐसा।
Hey, so let me tell you about this wild thing that happened to this jerk of a professor. I'm the only student in a wheelchair in our whole medical school, and my professor, Mr. Reynolds, never let me forget it. He set up every lab table just too high for me to reach and put my books on the top shelves to make everyone notice me. When I asked for help to make things easier, he'd sigh super loud and say, "Hoss won't make special rules for you." He planned required study groups in a basement room with no elevator, then acted all surprised when I couldn't get there. During our heart doctor class, he stared right at me and said doctors need to be strong enough for emergencies, like I wasn't fit for the job. Reynolds loved making up physical tasks that seemed meant to keep me out. He added a rule to the class plan that everyone had to stand for 4-hour fake surgeries with no breaks. He made me do tasks standing up, even though I could do them sitting just fine. When I asked why standing mattered, he said real doctors don't argue about their physical limits. He told the dean, when I complained the third time about access, that he wasn't being unfair, just getting us ready for the tough parts of being a doctor. He moved our hospital practice to the oldest building on campus, with narrow doors and no bathrooms I could use. He'd loudly ask other teachers, so I could hear, if I couldn't handle a hallway, how could I handle a heart emergency? But then one day, Reynolds didn't show up for Monday class, and the substitute teacher said sorry for the wait. "Professor Reynolds had an accident this weekend and will be out for a few weeks," she said, while students whispered to each other. By Wednesday, everyone in school knew what happened. Reynolds was at his fancy club, trying to show off for a lady by jumping a pool in a golf cart after drinking too much. The cart flipped and crushed both his legs, and the security cameras caught it all. Both his legs were broken, and he'd need a wheelchair for months while they healed. The video spread fast on school computers, with silly carnival music added. When Reynolds came back 3 weeks later, he was in a wheelchair with bright blue casts on both legs. The first thing he found out was his own classroom wasn't easy to use because he picked it for the 3 steps to his teaching spot. He had to teach from the back, and students had to turn around to see him. It was so satisfying watching him struggle with the problems he made for me. His favorite basement room was off limits since there was no elevator, and he'd argued against getting one for years. Why didn't anyone say these rooms were hard to use? He grumbled to the maintenance guys while I sat up front, loving every moment of his annoyance. The lab stuff he put on high shelves was now too high for him, and he had to ask students to grab things. The tough course he made to keep me out was too hard for him now, so he cancelled it. We're changing the emergency training to focus on medical smarts, not physical stuff, he said, clearly not happy. Students were giggling as he made changes for himself that he wouldn't make for me. Reynolds tried to act like he was still in charge, but kept hitting the access problems he'd defended for years. The elevator broke, and he missed 3 days of class because he couldn't get to the second floor. His office was up 2 flights of stairs, so he had to meet students in random empty rooms. Students started asking me for help instead of him because I knew how to adjust medical tasks for different needs. After class one day, Reynolds cornered me, looking embarrassed and sweaty from struggling with his wheelchair. "You need to help me figure this out," he said, pointing around the hard-to-use building. I looked at his sad face and felt super satisfied. "Sorry, Professor," I said with a big smile. "Medical school isn't made for people with limits. Maybe you should pick a job that fits your situation better." He grabbed my wrist as I started to roll away, and his grip was stronger than I thought. "You think this is funny, but I can make your life here awful," he whispered, his eyes looking mean and desperate. "Help me, or I'll tell everyone you cheated on the entrance tests and make up whatever proof I need." His voice got quieter and scarier. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected professor with a problem or the whiny student? I pulled my wrist free, and it hurt my arm. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it was in my throat, and my hands were shaking without me noticing. His threat stayed in the air between us. This wasn't just about classroom teasing anymore. He was talking about ruining my whole future by making people think I cheated to get into medical school. I rolled away fast without saying anything because I didn't trust my voice. My wheelchair wheels squeaked on the hall floor, and I could feel him staring at me as I headed to the exit. My brain was racing with everything he said, and I needed to get somewhere safe to think. I went straight to my dorm, my hands still shaking as I unlocked the door. I rolled inside, locked it, and grabbed my phone to write down everything he said while it was fresh. My fingers typed fast, noting where he cornered me, how he grabbed my wrist, his threat about saying I cheated, his promise to make fake proof, and how his voice got scarier when he called me whiny. I added the date and time at the top and saved the note with a clear title. My phone said it was 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and I wrote that down too. I read my note 3 times to make sure I got everything right. Then I texted my friend Haley to come over right away because I needed someone to hear what happened. I didn't explain it all in the text since I wanted to tell her in person to see her reaction. She texted back in 2 minutes, saying she was coming. I waited in my room, my mind stuck on the conversation. His mean eyes when he threatened me. His strong grip on my wrist. The way he made it sound like helping him or losing my career. 20 minutes later, Haley knocked, and I let her in. She saw my face and asked what was wrong. I told her everything while she typed notes on her laptop with times. She typed fast and asked things like what time it happened, where I was, his exact words, and if anyone else saw or heard. I answered, and she wrote it all neatly. When I finished, she stopped typing and looked worried. She said I should record any talks with Reynolds since threatening to make up proof is a big deal. I hadn't thought of that, but it made sense. I looked up state recording laws on my phone while Haley watched. After 15 minutes, I found out I can legally record talks I'm in without telling the other person. My state only needs one person to know about the recording. I felt relieved because this could protect me if he tried anything else. Haley helped me test my phone's recording app to make sure it worked and picked up clear sound. We tested it with her talking across the room, and it was clear enough to hear every word. I saved the recording steps in my notes so I wouldn't forget. After Haley left, I emailed Zara Green, my disability services coordinator, asking for an urgent meeting. I kept the email short but marked it important because I didn't want to write everything before talking in person. I said I needed to talk about a serious access issue right away. I hesitated for a second, then sent it. The email went through, and I felt tired from all the stress. Zara replied in an hour, offering a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. I said yes right away and added it to my calendar. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about Reynolds's threat over and over. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face and heard him promise to fake evidence. I wondered if he was already making fake emails or papers to say I cheated on tests. My mind made up scary ideas where he'd win because he's a professor and I'm just a student. What if he'd been planning this for weeks? What if the school believed him without checking? What if this stopped my doctor dreams before they started? I checked my phone every hour for weird emails or alerts, but nothing came. The room was dark and quiet except for my racing thoughts. When my alarm went off at 7 a.m., I felt like I hadn't slept. I got ready slowly and went to the Disability Services office, getting there 15 minutes early. Zara met me and took me to a small private room with a table and comfy chairs. I told her everything, including the blackmail threat, and she listened carefully, writing on a yellow pad. Her pen kept moving, and she didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked up, clearly worried as she saw the pattern. She asked about dates, times, and Reynolds's exact words. Then she told me to write down every talk with him from now on. She said detailed notes are my best protection, and the more I have, the harder it is for him to lie. She suggested having another teacher around for big school moments like tests or labs. Another professor there makes it tough for Reynolds to mess with me without someone noticing. I asked about ways to avoid Reynolds, and Zara said she'd ask the department for changes. Her face got serious, and she warned me it could take time since the department might complain about money or schedules. She'd seen them delay help before when it bothered teachers. I left her office feeling a bit better since someone believed me and knew what to do. But I also knew this would be a long fight. The next day, I went to class feeling nervous because Reynolds was teaching from his wheelchair up front. He was talking about heart procedures, pointing at screen diagrams. I took my usual seat and tried to focus. Halfway through, he stopped and looked around, his eyes locking on me. He stared too long, and it made my stomach hurt. I saw something sneaky in his look, colder than anger. He was planning something and wanted me to know. I looked away and typed notes, but my hand shook. The rest of the class was a blur, and I barely remembered it. 2 days later, I checked my email between classes and saw a school alert about my recent lab grade. I opened it and saw a 72, way lower than it should be since I did everything right. The feedback just said my technique was bad and my notes weren't complete, which didn't make sense because I checked my work 3 times. I knew this was Reynolds starting his revenge, and I felt mad and scared. I went to the course page and got the grading rules, then checked my assignment file, comparing them carefully. After 20 minutes, I found 3 deductions for things not in the original rules. One part lost points for missing a safety list that was never required. Another got marked down for short words when the guide said they were okay. The third said I didn't use a book that wasn't even on our list. I took pictures of everything, the rules, my work, and times they were made. Then I wrote a calm document explaining what was wrong with each deduction, even though I was so mad. I needed someone outside Reynolds's department to check this fairly. I remembered Raphael Hassan, a physiology teacher who helped another student with an unfair grade last year. I found his email and wrote a clear message, saying my grade didn't match the rules and I had proof of the mistakes. I attached my document and asked if he'd check it as a fair outsider. I read the email 3 times to make sure it sounded good, then sent it. He replied in under 2 hours, saying my proof was worrying and he'd help by watching any makeup work or future tasks to keep things fair. He offered to meet tomorrow afternoon to talk more. His email gave me hope that someone important believed me. I replied right away, saying yes to the meeting and thanking him. That afternoon, I got an email from the accommodation office about my request to avoid Reynolds. It was full of excuses about money and schedule problems, saying they couldn't promise changes before the semester ended. I sent it to Zara, annoyed, and she called me in 10 minutes. She said this happens a lot when changes bother teachers. The school says they're working on it but hopes students give up. She said she'd push harder and talk to her boss, but it might take weeks. The next day, I had a required lab and felt sick going in, knowing Reynolds would be there. I got to my station early, set up, and hid my phone in my lab coat pocket with the recorder on. Reynolds wheeled over 5 minutes into the session and stayed close, watching me. He made loud comments about doing things right, so others could hear. I stayed calm, focused on the steps, and didn't react. Every few minutes, he'd point out tiny things, like how I held a tool or labeled something. I followed the rules exactly and finished right. When the lab ended, I packed up fast, but Reynolds asked me to stay to talk about my grade. I saw Haley by the door and signaled her. She stayed in the hall, watching through the window. I checked my phone was recording and had battery, then told Reynolds I had a few minutes. He wheeled close, his face looking fake worried, making me uneasy. He said he was concerned about my work and noticed I seemed stressed in labs. His voice was soft, like a kind dad, not his usual mean self. He said maybe medical school was too hard for someone with my limits and I should think if it's the right choice. I saw what he was doing, acting like a caring teacher to cover up his sabotage. I stay calm and keep my voice steady when I say I'm sure my work is good and I'd be okay with someone else checking it to be fair. Reynolds' face gets tight for a second before he fakes being worried again. He says we don't need anyone else and we can fix this ourselves. Then he leans close, and I smell coffee on his breath. He talks quietly and says he'll drop the cheating talk if I stop complaining about accessibility stuff. I'm recording every word, and I feel super sure because he's admitting he's being mean. I say I'll think about it and grab my bag to leave before he pushes more. In the hallway, Haley sees my face and asks what's wrong. I can't stop smiling when I tell her I got what I needed on tape. That night, I meet Zara and play the recording in her office. Her face stays calm, but when Reynolds says he'll forget the cheating if I drop my complaints, she closes her eyes and breathes out. She says this is big and we need to tell HR and the dean because it's proof he's being unfair. I feel so relieved someone believes me and can help. Zara starts writing a report while I sit there, realizing this is real. She explains how to file a complaint and warns me Reynolds might get worse before the investigation because he knows he's in trouble. The next morning, I see an email from Reynolds, copied to the dean, with the subject academic integrity concern. My hands shake as I open it. He says my assignment looks like stuff online and shares screenshots that make it seem like I cheated. The words match medical websites perfectly, with no quotes or citations shown. It looks bad, and I panic because I know I didn't cheat. He suggests I quit the program to avoid trouble. I call Haley, and she comes over fast. We check my original files and spend an hour comparing them to his screenshots. We figure out he cropped out my citations and removed my quotation marks to make it look like I cheated. I'm shocked he'd fake evidence like that. Haley says we should save screenshots with dates to prove I didn't change anything. I call Zara, and we write a careful email to the dean with my original files, showing the citations Reynolds hid. Zara helps me sound professional, not upset. I want to share the recording, but Zara says we should wait to use it smartly in the complaint process. She says if we show it too soon, Reynolds might say it's fake. We need to let him mess up more first. Haley texts me that night about a funny video of Reynolds' golf cart accident going viral among medical students. Someone added silly sounds, and it's a big meme now. I want to share it because he deserves it, but Zara warned me not to do anything that looks like bullying. She says Reynolds will act like I'm the bad guy, a mean disabled student, and sharing the video would help his story. I save the links privately and don't share them, even though it feels unfair I have to stay nice. The next week, I go to a clinical test and find Reynolds put me at Station 7, which my wheelchair can't reach and the table's too high. I see Stations 2 and 5 are accessible and empty. I tell him, but he says those are taken by other students with accommodations. I show my disability services letter to the coordinator, who's right there. She asks Reynolds why the accessible stations aren't free. He makes excuses about equipment and training, but his face is red and other students are watching. The coordinator moves me to Station 5, and Reynolds glares at me like I did something wrong. During the test, he stands super close, commenting on every little thing I do, like how I hold tools or label stuff. Other students don't get this attention, and I feel everyone staring. I focus on doing everything right and ignore him. After, I go to a quiet room and write down everything he said and did, with times and witnesses' names. Zara said details are super important for proving he's being mean on purpose. The next week, I go to a written exam in Reynolds' class. The room's been changed, and the only accessible desk is right in front of where he'll watch us. Other accessible spots are blocked with stuff that wasn't there before. I know he's trying to scare me. I take the seat and try to focus. During the exam, Reynolds suddenly changes question 15, saying the patient has heart issues, which changes the answer. This goes against what he taught us, and I see other students look confused. Some erase their answers, but I write both answers and note the lecture contradiction with the time he said it. I turn in my exam with the note. Reynolds takes it without looking at me, and I leave feeling tired and mad. Back at my dorm, I get the grade appeal form online and fill it out right away. I list all the rules Reynolds broke, with details, times, witnesses, and my accommodation letters. It's late when I finish, but I feel good knowing I made an official record. 2 days later, Reynolds emails me and the rotation coordinator, saying I didn't do a physical test needed for hospital work. He says it's always been required and I need to prove I can handle emergencies. My stomach drops because no one else had to do this, and it feels like another attack. I send my accommodation letter to the coordinator, asking about this test. She replies in 3 hours, saying it's not a real requirement, and I'm cleared for hospital work. She copies Reynolds, and I know his plan failed. It scares me how far he'll go. That night, I can't focus on schoolwork. Fighting Reynolds is taking all my energy, and I'm falling behind in other classes. It's wearing me out in ways that aren't just grades. I email my advisor for mental health help, and she sends me to the counseling center, saying other students are stressed too. I book a Thursday appointment with a therapist who knows about disability issues and school pressure. I feel a bit better knowing someone might get what I'm going through. 3 days later, in Reynolds's class, he rolls to the front in his wheelchair and talks about needing accommodations for himself. He uses words like reasonable modifications and equal access, which feel fake because he's copying disability rights language he fought against for me. Some students nod like they feel bad for him, and he acts like he's the victim of a bad system, not the guy who made it worse. A classmate whispers it must be hard for him, and I want to yell that he caused this, but I stay quiet. The HR investigation starts 2 weeks after my complaint. 2 people meet me in a small room and seem to care as I explain everything. I play the recording of Reynolds's threat, and their faces change when they hear him offer to drop cheating claims if I stop complaining. I give them my binder with all incidents, dates, and Haley's witness statement. They take notes and ask about how this affected my schoolwork. They say to report any more trouble from Reynolds right away, and I feel a little hopeful someone's listening. 3 days later, HR emails that Reynolds can't contact me directly except in class, and other teachers will grade my work to keep it fair. I can also ask for a different supervisor if needed. I send this to Zara, and she says it's a big step showing HR found real evidence. The new grading starts, and I send my next lab report to a new professor. The grade is better than Reynolds's but still lower than it should be. I think his bad marks made other teachers see me as a weak student. I start a spreadsheet to show where my work meets the rules but gets low scores, to prove the bias. Raphael offers to watch my next big exam to make it fair, and I say yes. I take the test in his office with no one hovering or changing rules. It feels normal, and I focus on my answers. Raphael gives me a top score, proving I'm not failing like Reynolds said. He offers to write a letter for any future needs, and I save it in my file. 3 weeks later, HR says a hearing panel with 3 administrators, including Dean Chamberlain, will review my complaint. I'm nervous and ask Zara to help me prepare. We meet, and she helps me organize my evidence with a clear timeline and facts, not feelings. We practice my statement, and she stops me when I talk about emotions instead of what Reynolds did. I feel less scared after planning. The next morning, Reynolds emails me, breaking hours rules, saying we can settle privately and avoid a hearing. He offers a hospital placement to help my career if I drop my complaints. It's a sneaky bribe, and I'm mad he thinks he can trick me. I send it to HR and Zara, noting it breaks the contact rule. Zara says this helps our case by showing he knows is wrong. HR confirms they'll add it to the file. That night, I look up federal complaint rules on the Department of Education site. The ADA and Section 504 processes are complex, but I save everything in case the school's process fails. Zara says to wait, but having options makes me feel stronger. The next day, the lecture hall elevator is broken, and I worry about missing classes. But the coordinator emails that classes are moved to an accessible building. It's a small change, but it feels big because I didn't have to fight. After class, I hear two professors joking about Reynolds struggling with a door. One mimics him, and I feel uneasy because it's not about his actions anymore, just his disability. I keep going and pretend I didn't hear. The next day, I see Reynolds struggle with a narrow door. He tries a few times, and students watch. I look at my phone to avoid staring, not wanting to enjoy his struggle, even if it's awful. I feel mixed up, angry but not cruel. The night before the hearing, Haley helps me organize my evidence at my kitchen table. The recording is Exhibit A, with transcripts. My grades and rubrics are Exhibit B. She makes me practice my statement 3 times, keeping it factual. By midnight, we have a binder ready, and I'm less afraid. The hearing is in a conference room. I face Dean Chamberlain and 2 others, shaking a bit. I read my statement about Reynolds's barriers and threats, play the recording, and show my timeline. They ask questions, and I answer with facts. Reynolds says he was worried about patient safety and medical standards, but he sounds nervous about the recording. He says my complaints are revenge for his feedback, but he can't explain the threat. Zara got emails showing Reynolds fought accessibility upgrades years ago, saying they weren't needed. The panel looks serious reading them. Reynolds' excuse about budget doesn't match his emails. The hearing ends after 2 hours, and they'll decide in 48 hours. I go straight to a biochemistry exam, barely able to focus. 2 days later, HR says they found retaliation based on the recording and my complaints. Reynolds is off teaching until the full investigation. I'm so relieved he can't grade me or block my classes, but I'm nervous he'll fight back. 3 days later, the school announces an accessibility audit led by Zara. She asks me to be a student representative, and I say yes, wanting to help beyond my case. In anatomy lab, 3 students apologize for not speaking up about Reynolds sooner. They saw the barriers but didn't know they were on purpose. I'm glad they said it, but some friends avoid me now, scared of the drama. Haley says people are picking sides, and I feel lonely from the social fallout. 2 weeks later, Reynolds files a complaint saying I harassed him by taking photos of his wheelchair struggles and sharing them. It's a lie, but I have to respond. I send it to Zara, who says it's a common trick, and my records prove I didn't do it. It's still exhausting. I meet a disability rights lawyer downtown. She reviews everything and says I could file federal complaints, but it's slow and may not help more than the school's process. We decide to wait but keep records. It costs $300, but I feel safer with her advice. The registrar moves me out of Reynolds' classes for the semester, which means no recommendation letter from him for residency. It's a loss, but worth avoiding him. My advisor suggests other professors for letters, and I start meeting them. The accessibility audit brings changes. I see adjustable lab stations, a portable podium, and a fixed elevator. I test the new equipment for Zara and list what still needs fixing. Students like the changes too. Gossip about Reynolds fades, and I focus on school without constant fights. I relax in class and sleep better. I hear Reynolds might not return this year, maybe because of his legs or the hearing. There's no apology, and it feels unfinished, but I'm glad he's gone. In a humanities class, I write about how medical teams should support different abilities, not exclude people. My professor likes it and suggests publishing it. I'm proud something good came from this. 6 weeks later, HR says Reynolds gets a semester suspension without pay and must take training. He's not fired, and I'm frustrated it's not stronger, but I'm glad they acted. His complaint against me is dropped for no evidence, but no one clears my name publicly, which hurts. My rotation grades are solid BS with 1 A-, fair and earned. I'm proud I made it through. I joined the Accessibility Task Force permanently, making checklists for campus fixes. It feels good to help everyone. Haley and I talk about how much I leaned on her. She felt overwhelmed, so we set boundaries. I start a support group for disabled students, and 5 join the first meeting. It helps me feel less alone. 3 days before finals, Reynolds emails the task force about new policies but doesn't apologize. I archive it and move on. The semester ends, and I'm still here, moving to second year. The campus is more accessible, and I'm studying without fear. It's not a big win, but I'm okay, and the path forward feels possible.